This is Wednesday, May 11, and it is now 9:57 a.m. We are opening council time for Clark County Council. We begin with old business, minutes for May 4. Is there a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. The motion is passed unanimously. Now we move to the 78th Street Heritage Farm Sustainability Plan. Kathleen or Lindsay, whoever wishes to begin.
We actually have some staff here from Public Works that will introduce themselves here in just a moment and begin the presentation.
Good morning, Chair Bowerman and members of the council. My name is David Stipe. I'm the Planning and Development Manager for Parks and Lands in the Public Works Department. With me today is Rocky Houston, the Division Manager for Parks and Lands, and then Lindy Wallach, who's one of our park planners and is the lead park planner for Heritage Farm. Thanks for taking the time to discuss Heritage Farm with us today. It's been a while since we've been before you to talk about the farm. In fact, it was 2020 when the updated master plan was passed by the council. And at that time, you gave us some specific direction, not us specifically, since we're all new to the position, on how to move forward at Heritage Farm. Next slide, please. So today, I'd like to give you a little bit of background on the farm, since we do have some new council members and it's been some time since we've talked about it. A little bit of a progress update on what's been going on at the farm over the last couple of years. Talk a little bit about the business plan, which we have started to call the Business and Sustainability Plan. Discuss some of the potential options that we're looking at in conjunction with our partners, and also just have an opportunity to chat with you about those options. Next slide, please. So a little bit of a background on Heritage Farm, just for your edification. In the late 19th century, Heritage Farm was actually the Clark County Poor Farm. It's a place where folks who were experiencing some financial challenges were sent to live and work. As the social policies in the United States and here in Washington changed, the poor farm ceased to operate in the early 1940s. At that time, Clark County deeded the land to Washington State University to be used for research and as an experiment station. In 2008, Washington State University deeded the land back to Clark County, and through an agreement with WSU, the county's agricultural extension services were moved on site at the administration building. Initially, the property, was managed by Clark County Public Health as an extension service, which closely aligned with public health initiatives. In 2010, the first master plan for Heritage Farm was developed. It envisioned a balance of community access to the farm and continued use as an agricultural resource. It's worth noting that in 2013, the farm was added to the Washington State and National Register of Historic Places. In 2014, right around the time the Parks and Lands Division was created in Public Works, the site was turned over to Public Works and Parks and Lands for management. And now in 2020, as I mentioned previously, an update to the master plan was completed to reflect some of the improvements that were constructed on the site between the 2010 master plan and 2019 when the master plan was finalized. The draft master plan was finalized. At that time, in 2020, when the 2019 master plan was adopted by the council, directed staff to explore options to improve the economic sustainability of the property and the operations, as well as increasing public access there. Next slide, please. This slide just really quickly gives you a visual representation of the 2010 master plan and the 2020 master plan, and you'll immediately notice that there's not a whole lot that changed across the site. Some of those changes, however, were a new sustainable parking lot, stormwater parking lot in the upper left-hand corner of the 2020 master plan, which is the northwest corner. The living farm that was represented on the 2010 master plan as a demonstration site was moved to an off-site location. The Community Learning Center and Children's Garden was eliminated from the south of the site because the Bud Cleve Community Room was developed and a playground was developed at Luke Jensen's Sports Complex. The interpretive and hiking trails that were demonstrated on the 2010 master plan were realigned to provide more contiguous agricultural land for uninterrupted agricultural operations. The historic cemetery, which is on the south of the site, was also delineated in that 2020 update, and a boundary line adjustment that was completed near Hazeldale was also represented on that 2020 master plan. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, when we were just going through the master plan process, council directed staff to explore some changes to the economic structure of the property and the operations so we could find some more sustainable economic structure and to increase public access. Currently, the farm isn't accessible, as some of you may realize, to the general public. It's only accessible beyond the gate to those who have registered to participate in a program that's being operated by one of our many partners. So in order to address the public access and the sustainability issues, we've kicked off a process to develop that business sustainability plan. And we've worked with WSU, one of our partners, to take the first step in that process. They provided a report, which I believe we've provided to you. If not, we can provide it to you, called the Moving Heritage Farm Forward Strategic and Operational Recommendations Report, back in March of this year. And it contains information about the Clark County food system. It summarizes a bunch of stakeholder interviews. It provides information on the farm models, other farm models in the United States, and it outlines some recommendations on the processes the county could undertake to increase revenue streams and public access at Heritage Farm. This year, the Parks and Lands staff determined that we would complete the remainder of the sustainability plan in-house, but we would secure the services of a consultant for the public facilitation portion of the work, with the potential of engaging that consultant in some economic analysis of some of the preferred alternatives that may come out in the business sustainability plan. We're beginning the initial stages of this work, as I mentioned, and we met with the Parks Advisory Board in April to receive feedback from them on the plan development.
And David, I'd just like to add, the use of the consultant was for a couple of reasons. One is capacity within our staff to make sure that. And the second is we wanted to make sure we had a robust engagement and diversified engagement. We wanted to make sure there was a neutral party there to kind of ensure that people were free and feeling heard and open to responding. And we felt that this was the best way to kind of address both of those things. David.
Yes, thank you for adding that. At the time that we met with the Parks Advisory Board, we reviewed our approach to developing the business sustainability plan. We discussed a preliminary list of steering committee members that we're identifying to help us lead the process. And we discussed some potential farm concepts that were in the Washington State University plan report, excuse me. At that time, the Parks Advisory Board expressed an interest in involving more community members on the steering committee that did not necessarily have a vested interest in the farm at this date and farming in general. They also expressed a desire for increased general public access to the property. Next slide, please. So we've made an attempt here to demonstrate where we are with the current operations of Heritage Farm and then represent some of the potential outcomes that might come out of the business sustainability plan. Currently, the primary use of the farm is, as you know, a Washington State Extension office and educational facility, represented sort of in the middle of this slide. And then there are community gardens and some research on the property currently, including a weather station and some WSU Extension research, and the community, the Clark County Community Food Bank has a large food production operation there. The options that have been explored to date and that we've discussed as staff all seek to provide enhanced public access, as we've spoken about previously. Concepts like public-private partnerships with a focus on food systems and a traditional park would actually provide generally the largest increase in public access. Funding with these models could also reduce the impact on the county's general fund with outside revenue or through adjustments of internal funding sources. On the other end of the public access spectrum, heavy agricultural concepts like incubator farming or farms managed by a separate operator could have a negative impact on public access, but a positive impact on the bottom line.
So the slide in front of you, go back real quick. So I'm very visual, so I apologize. So think of it as a slider scale. So managed use is more like a park where we're managing the use of the public. The other side is more controlled, kind of like it is today, where there is more agricultural. So the more uses are for managed by others or those incubators. Of course, there's a concern, of course, having the public going through those farmlands. And so this is sort of the representative that, you know, and we believe the final options will have elements of both of these. It's not going to be I don't believe, a one option only as it gets moved forward to kind of meet the historical uses, the current uses, and maybe those future uses. I also want to just reflect on some of those steering committee concepts we have. So it's the neighborhood association members, the business community, so from the Hazeldale, Salmon Creek, I'm going to get the name wrong on my tip right here, but the business leaders, our adjacent neighbors that are right next door to it. And then we're still looking at outreaching for some other community partners that are engaged in meeting underserved communities. So again, to kind of diversify it beyond just those farm users, which were historically part of the WSU's research, which they came up with a lot of great concepts for us to explore, looking at a variety of other models across the nation, here in the Northwest and all the way to New York. So again, there were some options out there for us to look at and dive deeper into it as we go into this next phase. Kathleen?
Yeah, just really quick. I know they're talking about the WASU report. I did just forward it to you. Staff had sent it to me on Monday, so my apologies for not sending that ahead of time, but there is a lot more discussion to come over the next couple of months on what council's direction will be with regards to some of those concepts.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a bit of information that we could share with you today. I'm trying to race through a 10-minute presentation so we can get to to your feedback. So I apologize for leaving out some of that information. I guess the only other steering committee addition that we've made is we've reached out to the school district, and they have an outdoor education program that has an agriculture component, and we're working on the process of engaging them as a steering committee member. So let's see where we were here. Next slide, please. So again, as I mentioned at the outset, we're just here today to give you that quick update and then engage in a conversation with you about the farm. And I believe after that, we have a conversation about a potential lease opportunity. So with that, I'm ready to take questions.
Madam Chair, I have some
Yes,
questions.
Counselor. Go
So,
ahead.
thank you. So I'm not sure if we're behind, ignored, ahead, kind of lost focus on the process. I'm not sure. I mean, I would have liked to have seen that report ahead of this meeting so we could have talked about it. Is that a business plan? I mean, okay, so you're shaking your head no. That's good to hear. You know, did the Parks Advisory Group have any additions, amendments to the plan that, or recommendations that WSU is bringing forward? I know we've had some diversity of opinion here over the years, but we've been basically waiting a couple of years for a business plan. You know, everything from let's just sell it and develop it to let's develop a chunk of it. I think there's been a lack of widespread agreement other than I think most of us have uniformly said this, we really need a sustainability plan. You know, we need a manager. We need complementary activities going on. We want to expand the agricultural uses, not only real time to benefit food banks, and you know, LULAC's one of those that wants to have their own food bank. And I really look forward to your discussion of the incubator farm program. That's a great compatible use for this. So, you know, at some point, so I don't know if we're ahead or behind. I mean, I'd like a check-in in detail of where we're at and what we're doing. You know, I hate going up to that chain link fence and having a cipher lock and not being able to walk around the farm or have public access. I in the past compared this to Columbia Springs and the wide educational, both school and to the public, and public access to Columbia Springs. It is a model for a maximization of public land for the public benefit, and I'm hoping that Heritage Farm can be that for agriculture in our community. So if this isn't a plan that was just forwarded to us as far as a business plan, when will we see it? Where are we at?
So if I could just provide some clarity as well. So yes, this has been discussed. Council did give direction to staff, I believe, last summer regarding financial stability and sustainability of the farm and working with Wazoo on a business plan. Like I said earlier, I just sent you the sustainability plan that Wazoo has created. I don't think anybody has had the opportunity to go through that in detail. That will be coming. I asked staff to come today to provide an overview of that process, but also to get in front of council because there was no other majority direction given from council and on what we're going to do with the farm moving forward. And we do have some immediate requests that we want to be able to move on if that's what the council chooses to do. And I'll also note, as they already mentioned, they've been with us for 5 months. We've had some staff turnover, so I think that's part of it. I met with them yesterday. They're dedicated to this project and managing it in the way that council sees fit moving forward on a policy direction. So I'm excited that they're here today, and I know there's going to be a lot more information, detailed information presented to council and discussion within the next month or two.
Okay, thanks for that. And I just want to add very briefly, Chair, and I do have a question because I had heard about the wetlands restoration project and expansion and buffer, and how does that comport with the last 2020 update as for where parking lots were going to be? And, you know, I'm wondering if we can get some detail on that at some point as well. You know, it's not our role to micromanage what you do. So this is all great news that you're getting on board and moving forward with this. I'm hoping that we can accelerate this process, and whatever direction you need, I hope we can give it today. We are missing one counselor, but you know, and I really look forward to the proposal on the contract for LULAC.
So we can talk about our
David,
plans.
David, if I may just say thank you for the overview that you have given. And I noticed on your slide 6 that had the diagram that the incubator program was one that was listed there with, yes, there it is in a circle kind of on the right. Is this an appropriate time to take up the LULAC Grows Farm Incubator program?
It's absolutely appropriate. It's at council's discretion. We can answer more questions about the business sustainability plan, or we can move right to the LULAC conversation. It's at your pleasure.
I do have a question on the contract that has been worked out with LULAC. My understanding is that from them, because we, council received a nice lengthy letter from LULAC, kind of with an overview of what had been accomplished from their perspective. And they felt that the contract that they have received now from you for services they thought was sustainable and would enhance the capacity of young and emerging farmers here in Clark County. All sounded very positive on that end. I just wanted to verify that on your end of looking at the contract, which I believe you all drafted, that you are feeling equally positive about that.
I think we've worked with the League of United Latin American Citizens on an acreage that we have available and is together. I'm trying to think of that other word, together.
Contiguous.
Thank you. Contiguous. And a price in 5 years. I think a lot of our leases are shorter in term and kind of build on that, but they were adamant, and I understand it is for their investment, want to make sure they had a 5-year commitment where they can do that. And so those are the things that are in that current lease document. It is consistent with current uses out there. We had another incubator program that was there previously, and that ended recently, where I believe we had some former incarcerated people that were coming out there, as well as some other students that were doing that a similar type of incubator program. This is different, but again, that use type. So
and I believe, and the goal is to have the lease probably in front of council next week for your consideration. But the feedback is really important today because it is a proposed 5-year lease, which may be within the council's policy recommendations. We just want to make sure we're not committing to a term if council had a different direction for the farm as a whole as discussed previously. So I think the feedback on the term and the size would be helpful for staff today in order to help move this forward if appropriate.
Chair, I have a couple comments.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
Just a sidebar, I'm a gentleman sort of farmer. I have raised planter boxes, 14 dwarf fruit trees, and we donate lots of produce and fruit to food banks each year because we can't use it all, even with our extended family. So I really enjoy the entire farming piece. You mentioned the parking lot that was done at the Heritage Farm facility. I was actually the chair of the Clean Water Commission when that went in at that particular time, as we spent time over there. So I look forward to reading the materials and learning more and studying it. I would really be personally interested, only because I think there's a great opportunity to work with school districts and ag programs. Perhaps there are opportunities in working with short-term residents of the jails that you can put out to work and to get their hands in the soil. I mean, there's lots of sort of positives, I think, that can come out of this, and it's a great opportunity. So I just want to make those general comments. I look forward to being a student to learn more about what you're doing. particularly on the sustainability, because I'm curious as to what it actually costs the county to operate heritage farms and what that gap is between revenue and cost at some point. Thank you.
So if I could just give my personal feelings, 1, 5 years of a lease, I am comfortable with that. And 2, I would, if it fits, I would give them whatever acreage for this program, because I think it would be a centerpiece. If we have, and I think the last I heard was 30 acres, if we have that available, you know, and I consider, you know, if you're haying a parcel twice a year, I think that's underused. I mean, I'd like, if we can fit them into 30 acres, I'm going to advocate that we do that. And the 5 years I'm very comfortable with.
Thank you, Councillor. I echo what you said in terms of the support for the project going forward. That's for sure. And the 5-year term is absolutely understandable from LULAC's perspective. I don't know the number of acres that they have requested. Could you tell us about that, David?
I would defer to Rocky to answer that question, since he's been the primary point person on the LULAC lease at this point.
So, Madam Chair, originally they did request 30 acres, but we only had 10 acres that's available to meet their needs. So the other acreage we do have available is sloped, so it's difficult to farm it, and that requires special techniques. Additionally, it's not irrigated, so again, that is another limitation. There are crops and that can utilize that, but again, this 10 acres we feel is consistent, and we worked with Ed to confirm that was would meet their needs as well, and we've got confirmation for that.
Okay, very good. Well, I'd like to share with the public one sentence that Ed Rosales had in his letter that he wrote to council, because it's his goal for this incubator project. And I thought this was particularly important as council moves ahead with this consideration. My goal is to build a network of farms and farmers in Southwest Washington that both support each other and learn from each other, while providing hands-on experiences for young people interested in learning more about the wide variety of educational and job opportunities within agronomy and agribusiness today in Washington state. And I can really imagine nothing more important than that in an incubator program. So I'm not sure if we have a third nod at this point for staff to go ahead. Do
Chair?
we? Yes.
Chair, I have
Yes, Councillor Lenz.
a couple of questions and comments. I also support this project in moving forward and am comfortable with the 5-year term. So as far as direction on that, I think that is good. I would like, you know, we do still need to see the contract and actually see the proposal. We did receive a nice letter from LULAC, but we haven't seen the proposal. So when we see the contract, if we could also see the original proposal, that would be fantastic, just to be able to link them up. And in, you know, hopefully in enough advance of the meeting that we can read it before the meeting. I know that we will continue the conversation here about the Heritage Farm, but since we jumped from the sustainability plan to the LULAC proposal, I want to come back to the sustainability plan for a moment. I would love to hear from you so that we can give you the direction that you need and are asking for. I'd love a little bit more clarity on specifically what it is you are asking for. Is it the use? I'm saying what I've heard, and please let's firm that up. The advisory committee and the types of membership in that committee, and meeting to evaluate the Metro Center proposal as well as committee generated ideas. Is that what you're asking us to kind of give a nod to?
Yes. So we want to make sure that sort of the concepts that are in front of you, there's nothing here or in the report that you're not interested in. So we don't want to go down a path that is not going to be supported. If there's something missing here, we want to make sure we have that so we can investigate that. And if our cluster concepts, mixed use of meeting some of these things is a preference over trying to come up with more of a consistent one-stop shop approach. And we can talk about our timeline that we've got proposed and answer the question in regards to where we're at versus what maybe the previous timeline was as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And Chair, I just have a short follow-up to continue that conversation. I'd love to know more about your proposed timeline. I am also feeling that I would like, before necessarily, if I'm the only one, then so be it, but before necessarily talking more about direction, though it sounds like direction is being given today about potential direction with regard to committing 10 more acres, I would like the time to review the Metro Center report and perhaps to get a list from you, and not a formal report or anything, but a list of the components of the advisory committee that you've listed out and the timeline so that we can look at that and digest it and then come back to another conversation?
I'd be more than happy to come back with that information for you in advance and have another session like this.
I know I'd appreciate that.
If I could just add to Rocky's comments. We're working on a schedule for the development of the business sustainability plan. We're working on engaging that public involvement consultant. We've gone through the MRSC, the multiple, it's a state roster, involved the state and our public works department's process in selecting a consultant to help us with that conversation. And we're looking at probably 12 to 15 months of developing a plan. I've developed numerous master plans and business plans in my career, and 12 to 15 months is a realistic but ambitious timeline, given that all the hurdles that we've experienced in the last 2 years with public engagement. And we will be happy to share with you our steering committee list and receive input on our steering committee list. And we'll be happy to have this conversation as many times with you as you'd like. We're seeking feedback and input.
So if I may, Madam Chair, so I was thinking exactly kind of the same question that Councilor Lentz had. What questions do you have? What guidance do you need? I mean, all of the uses that are going on at Heritage right now are perfect. You know, from 4-H to SNAP, WSU, master composting, the research that's happening out there, the programs for our juveniles, the programs for our incarcerated and those looking for programming outside of incarceration. I mean, everything that's happening out there is great. It's just that it's very disparate. It's not managed by a single office. They're not complementary. I mean, one of the times I was out there, it was certainly a slice in time looking at our community gardens. They weren't part of the composting that was going on at the farm itself. And I'm like, well, how can that be? You know, I mean, they have all this compost material right there. And then off to the side, we've got this Heritage Farm composting program, and they're not meeting each other. We had a waiting list on the community gardens. And then some people, I found out, had multiple lots, while some people were on a wait list and could never get a lot. Yet we have unused acreage. And so, you know, it's that kind of thing, you know, that's for a manager to manage. I mean, I'm all in favor of amplifying everything we're doing out there. Our greenhouses, you know, we could, how do we get our maximum use of that greenhouse for more of the year? I mean, that's the biggest challenge, is our environment for some of these jail programs. I mean, they only can go out there for a couple months of the year. But boy, it would be great if we could get it year round. So, I mean, those are the things I've been thinking about. And obviously a walking trail would be really nice.
And Chair, if I can, I actually would recommend that since I just sent you the report that was just done, that we give council the week and maybe bring this back next week to talk about the specific recommendations and get council feedback on that at that time. But for today, maybe just getting the feedback on the LULAC lease and whether or not you have any concerns with the acreage or the years based on other policy direction that you may be considering for the site as a whole.
I
And
think
if
we
I
got
can add,
three nods on the latter, so just as a comment there, but we haven't seen the contract yet. So if you could send that to council as well prior to the discussion for next week.
Chair, there's one other broad question for me is, just my naivete is, is there a long-term, where is the long-term plan I need to look at for the use of the property going forward for the next 10, 20, 30 years? Is there such an outline that indicates, just given development and et cetera?
I think we're in the,
So we have the master plan that was adopted in 2020, and we'll make sure we can get you a copy to that, which has a very broad scope. It doesn't have a real focused delineation on this. This is going to be done in this 5 years or that 10 years. We sort of have started a capital plan that we're updating annually that would be influenced by those things, and those projects would feed into that process, and we'd be bringing that back to you on an annual basis. And so it'd be just part of our portfolio of all of our park assets, the farm, Luke Jensen that was referenced, as well as our legacy lands and those other elements. But we're trying to have that integrated thing, that plan that's looking at all those capital and is being a representative of all of our properties and our needs. And as you guys know better than I, it's tough to balance all those things.
On the surface, 5 years sounds reasonable to me, but it would be nice to have, to sort of look out to see what other things are planned, and does anything step on anything? Is there more land that would become available if the Lulu program could expand, et cetera? Just a broad planning sense.
And if I can, as Rocky mentioned, we do have the master plan that was developed. There hasn't been a majority direction from council on the long-term uses of Heritage Farm. But the first step was to get this business plan and information using Wazoo as a partner in that. So there is still room for conversation from council on what that could look like on a long-term, which is one of the main, usually when we have leases coming for the council, we don't usually talk about them now. It's usually at just a council meeting on a Tuesday to approve. But knowing that that long-term policy hasn't been given by council yet, I want to make sure that we're not, that 5 years is still doable to allow flexibility for you to diversify how you want to use that farm long-term.
and if I might add one other comment about direction. As we mentioned, and we continue to mention, we're sort of new. We didn't receive the direction previously as individuals or as staff. Some of the council is new. And we just wanted to check in today to find out if the sideboards that were put up for the previous staff with regards to planning at Heritage Farm were still in place, or whether they were moved substantially before we start expending staff time and resources marching forward on this business plan. And so this isn't the last opportunity for you to adjust those sideboards and parameters. It's just the first step in the conversation.
So are you comfortable you're getting a sense of support?
I'm comfortable with the directions that the current sideboards are steering me and the feedback that I'm getting today, so we can move forward with the development of the business sustainability plan.
So
And like
we
I said,
will
we'll
look
add-
forward to that next week.
Yes, and also just to add one more thing, and I know they've already touched on it, there is a thorough review going on the advisory boards and the technical committees on why they were set up, what is their role, what's their responsibility, and is that appropriate and how we move forward, because we want to make sure that they're not a barrier in any process, that they're actually adding value in how they are communicating with us and the community. So that review is going on as well. But we'll certainly come back next week to talk about the proposed plan from Wazoo and their work, and get the feedback from council then.
And the contract, correct?
The contract will be sent to council. That will not be on Wednesday's agenda. That will be on Tuesday's agenda. Hopefully, if the contract is completely done with the negotiations, we'll put it on the Tuesday council meeting for your consideration, and then the feedback on the remainder would be at Wednesday's council time.
Very good. I think we're ready to move on, aren't we? And thank you, David and Rocky. That was a good update, and we see that we have a ways to go. So thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
indeed. Let's move to new business, and this is a proclamation request for Drug Court Month. Lindsay?
Yes, so as you said, this is a request for a proclamation for Drug Court Month. With the exception of the year 2020, the council has done this at least going back to 2015. The national organization is the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, and they have designated the month of May as National Drug Court Month. Similarly, the Washington State Association of Drug Court Professionals is requesting that local jurisdictions designate the month of May as Drug Court Month. So we do have a drug court here in Clark County that's operational. It's a therapeutic court that provides opportunities for folks that are within the criminal justice system that have a drug addiction. And so I'm happy to answer any questions about this, but this is the same language that we've done in years past.
Questions from council? Lindsay, I have one. It deals with the second whereas. And by the way, I should start by saying I'm completely supportive of both this court and this proclamation. But I do have a question on the second whereas. It says here that therapeutic courts promote equity by providing an off-ramp from incarceration. Okay, that's great. Here's my question. And loss of parental rights for individuals involved in the criminal and child welfare legal systems, thereby lessening the impact of systemic racism. What is that saying?
That sentence is a little clunky. I'll give you that. So I think if you take it in terms of an off-ramp from incarceration for individuals involved in the criminal legal system, and then an off-ramp from loss of parental rights for individuals involved in the child welfare legal system, that's referring to dependency cases in which somebody could lose their parental rights to their child or children. In terms of lessening the impact of systemic racism, what they're referring to here is the studies that have shown that there is an impact in terms of the systemic racism as it is involved within the criminal and child welfare legal systems. I certainly think that it's within council's purview if you want to omit that or continue to include that, but that's what they're referring to in that section.
So off-ramp refers to the second part of that as well, I take it, so that it's providing an off-ramp for people who are losing parental rights for individuals to where they wouldn't lose those rights. Is that the idea?
That's correct, yeah. So
oh man, that doesn't come through to me at all. I just think the verbiage on that could use some fine tuning there. And I don't know about the way others feel, but if you could fine tune that language, I think it would help a lot of us who are reading it.
Yeah, it's not entirely clear, but you're correct that in the same way that drug courts can provide an alternative for people in the criminal justice system as an alternative to incarceration, similarly for people that risk potentially losing their parental rights due to that drug addiction, that they can then not have to have their parental rights potentially lost within that child welfare legal system or the dependency system. So I'm happy to clean up that language a little bit and try and make it more clear.
Then we'll understand the language. Now, I don't know how council feels about inclusion of that whereas, but others can comment on that.
Chair?
Yes, Councilor Lentz.
I support this proclamation, and I would support it as written. I didn't have an issue with that sentence. I will have no problem with if there is a grammatical edit that can make it more clear to some, then I would be fine with that. I would prefer not to see it removed.
And others?
Chair?
Yes, Counselor?
So when I read it, and then when I listen to you asking your questions and Leslie responding, I was sort of shaking my head because it's not as clear to me as well what the intent is. So I would be open to some wordsmithing to help clean it up, clarify it a bit.
Yeah, let's definitely do the clarifications. I don't call that wordsmithing, but I do call it clarification of the language. So I'll look forward to that, Lindsay. Are there other comments on the proclamation?
I certainly support the court and all of the collaborative courts that are in place here in Clark County. They really are best practices in the criminal justice system. And drug court is among the very most important ones. So I certainly support the proclamation and with some of the edits that have been discussed.
I will go ahead and make those edits and get that to staff, and we'll have this on for the Tuesday, May 17th agenda.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Counselor reports.
Chair?
I'm sorry. Yes, Counselor Lenz.
Yes, while we're under my counselor report, but while we've just talked about proclamations, I wanted to check in on the Pride Month proclamation that came to council for consideration a couple of weeks ago, and I believe that folks wanted a little more time to look at it and work with it, and just to make sure that that is still moving. I hadn't heard anything or seen any proposed edits, so just wanted to know.
It'll be coming back on next week's council time with some edits based on feedback from council for you to review next week for the June month.
Okay. If we could see a redlined version of that, that'd be great. Thank you.
There are no counselor reports.
Couple brief counselor reports.
Yes.
If I may.
Go ahead.
This is Counselor Medvedji here. So I had a meeting with Family Promise, which is doing just amazing work in the community, in the homeless community, to basically prevent homelessness. And they have such an enormous success rate that I'm hoping we can give them a lot more visibility. And we'll get into more detail. My meeting followed the ECHO meeting that we had in the morning. I wish I had had it reversed so I could have invited them to come and do a presentation on all the work they're doing in the community. So there will be more to follow on that. I just wanted to highlight for those who have been watching the process, the RFP for Lake Vancouver has successfully gone through. And this is a start. This is a great start to get all the stakeholders together to start looking at, one, who the stakeholders are, and two, get them around the same table so we can start improving the health of the watershed and the lake itself. That earmark that came from some really hard work by our local legislative delegation, and they had to also push it through this last budget too to get it extended to the end of the biennium. So it was a lot of hard work by a lot of people who care about Lake Vancouver. So some positive movement. I would ask the manager, is there a public announcement as to who was awarded the contract?
Yeah, we don't usually do public press releases on leases or on contracts, but I can share that the contract has been signed, and so it's been executed, and it will be before council on Tuesday just for budget capacity, where we can expend and then we get reimbursed by Department of Ecology. So that will be before you on Tuesday.
Super. Thank you very much.
Councilor reports?
Chair,
Yes.
just one comment. I met yesterday with Miriam Halliday from the workforce. So we had a nice conversation, and we're going to move forward, and I agreed to participate in a couple of different capacities. So hopefully we'll have something positive to report down the line.
Very good. I'm sure you will. Work session requests. We had one for the prosecuting attorney their caseload. And I don't know who wants to kick this off. Kathleen,
I can certainly
Leslie?
do.
Okay,
Yes, I can
great.
certainly do that, Chair. So this is a follow-up to the request from council to see the number of cases that are in the backlog in the prosecuting attorney's office. I have talked to the prosecuting attorney, Tony Golick. He's actually requesting a work session rather than just reporting back at a council time, just to ensure that there is dedicated time for discussions, questions and answers on all of that. So this is simply requesting approval to schedule a work session in June where he can come and share the information that council has requested. Chair, if you're speaking, you're muted. So Chair, if you can hear me, we have unmuted you.
So I'm going to assume my vice chair duty so we can move on. I do want to take at least a couple-minute break before we go into executive session. We will be with a lawyer. I don't know.
We have one item before executive session, which is policy updates.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go ahead with our chair is back. Can you hear us?
I can now. Thank you.
All right, we were just going to go into the policy updates. I turn
Lindsay?
it back over to the chair.
And Lindsay?
Chair, procedurally, I don't know that we necessarily formally got the consensus for moving forward with the work session. I didn't see opposition, but we didn't have the nod. So now it looks like we have approval for us all to move forward with the work session. Just wanted to make sure that didn't get skipped.
Lindsay, go ahead.
I don't have anything further. I will just add to Councillor Medvedji's point on Vancouver Lake. I did have a kickoff meeting with the selected consultant on Monday. They're really excited to get going, and I think they're going to be a great fit for the work that needs to be done. So I'm happy to talk further about it, but that's all I have today.
Okay, very good. And we have 2 executive sessions that we need to move into next. Pending litigation on both, authorized through RCW 42.30.110, Section 1I, 10 minutes on each. Council will be present, and we have no report after, but we will come back to council time to adjourn. And that would be, let's give us a couple of minutes to get in and out at about 11:23. No, that's not right. 11:13. Is that correct? 11:13. Okay, very good. We will see you in executive session and then back here afterwards. Thank you. It is 11:13. We have completed in Clark County Council the 2 executive sessions pertaining to pending litigation. Council was present. There is no after action. So we are now back in council time, and the meeting is adjourned.